Hi, this is Amy Romeo from the jewelry making and craft blog amyromeo.com, and on this channel I like to share fun and easy jewelry making and craft projects. Today I have a really fun summer craft project for you. I'll be showing you how to make this really pretty Daisy keychain using faux leather, heat transfer vinyl, and a Cricut. I'll walk you through step by step, every step from cutting the SVG to layering the keychain, pressing it, and then attaching the tassel. So if you're ready to get started, let's dive right in. So let's go over the tools and materials we'll be using to make this really cute double-sided faux leather daisy keychain with a Cricut. I'll be using the Cricut Maker, but you can use any of the 5 current Cricut machines, the Maker 3, the Explore Air 2, the Explore 3, or even the Cricut Joy. And that's because I'm using the standard fine point blade to cut the faux leather, which comes with every machine. You don't need a special blade to cut faux leather, and I'll show you the cut settings that I use when we get into Design Space. So the faux leather that I'm using is just a printed, this is a sheet, and you can see it comes on lots of different polka dot prints. I'll link to this faux leather and all of the materials that I used in the description for you. You don't have to use a print, you could use a solid, it's really up to you. And then for the center of the daisy, I use some glitter heat transfer vinyl. You could use solid if you wanted, or you could even use permanent vinyl if that's what you had on hand and you preferred. To press the heat transfer vinyl onto the faux leather, I'll be using my Cricut Easy Press Mini on the low setting, which is just the first bar. You can also use a regular Easy Press set to about 265 degrees. I don't recommend pressing faux leather and vinyl using a large heat press like the type that comes down like a clamshell, only because it's harder to regulate the pressure, and too much pressure can flatten out your faux leather. But if that's what you have, then you'll just want to do some testing, some test pressing before you start playing around and cutting some faux leathers that you really want to use and enjoy. To tape the faux leather down to the mat, I'm going to use some blue painter's tape. This helps keep the faux leather on the mat, and it also is easy to lift off and reuse. So I love that. You'll use a purple strong grip cutting mat to cut the faux leather and a green standard grip mat for the Cricut to cut the vinyl. If you're using the Joy, then just use that little green mat that the Joy comes with. To protect my surface when I'm pressing, I'll use my heat pressing pad, and then this is a little piece of Teflon sheet that I've trimmed down from a larger size. I'm using craft scissors and weeding tools to weed out the vinyl. You can use a hook or you can use a pin pen. Now to glue the faux leather keychain together, I'm going to use some of this Fabri-Tac glue. You can use any fabric glue you have on hand that you like. You can even use a craft glue like art glitter glue or barely art glue. Those two work really well too. And I'll show you my trick for getting a really nice firm seal when you glue this keychain together. Then you have some keychain hardware so you can attach a key ring. These are 1 1/4 inch. I really like this size, and they come in silver or like a gold finish. They even come in other finishes like darker bronze, things like that. So these are really fun. I'll link to those for you. And then if you wanted to, you could add an optional little tassel. This is a faux suede tassel, and Amazon has a bunch of these. This is, I think it's a 1 1/4 inch size, and these ones have a little silver cap at the top. So if you want to coordinate your keyring color, just be careful when you're shopping for your tassels that you're matching up that tassel cap color. And if you do want to attach a tassel, then you can use some flat nose pliers and 10mm jump rings. So finally, the last thing you need is the SVG template for my Daisy keychain so you can upload it to Cricut Design Space. So let me show you how to get that. We'll get it uploaded into Cricut Design Space and cut out so we can assemble our keychain. So to make this project, you'll want to get the SVG for the keychain from my SVG shop. I have hundreds of SVGs in my shop for keychains and earrings. At the time I'm recording this, I don't have the SVG for this project in my shop yet, but by the time you're watching this video, it will be there. You can click on the link here on the screen or get the link in the description. It'll bring you to a product page, just like my taco earrings SVG, and you'll see that you can either choose a personal use version or you can choose a small commercial use version, which gives you a commercial use license to sell physical products made from my designs. Then you'll check out and you'll receive an email and you will download the SVG folder. The folder will be zipped and you will need to unzip it before you can upload the unzipped SVG file to Cricut Design Space. So starting with a blank canvas in Cricut Design Space, you'll click on Upload and then Upload Image, and you'll browse to where your unzipped SVG template for this project is on your device. It's important that it's unzipped or else it won't upload properly. So once you've clicked on it, it will appear here in your recent uploads row. So I have it here already. I'll click to select it and then click Add to Canvas. So you'll see the layers of this project. We've got basically 3 layers. The yellow layer is that center that we'll cut from heat transfer vinyl, and then these bottom 2 layers will both cut from faux leather. I'm cutting them from the same color faux leather, but you could definitely cut them from different colors if you wanted to. But to keep it simple, we'll cut 1 mat for the vinyl and we'll cut 1 mat for the faux leather. So I'm going to leave it this size. If you are using the Cricut Joy, 6.51 inches is a little too big to go on the mat, so you'll just want to make sure that the Joy is selected here as your machine, and then drag this down to size, and then when you see the mat preview screen, it will show you if it fits on that little mat. It'll just take a tiny bit of adjustment to make this work for the Joy. But I'm using the Maker, so I'm going to go ahead and click the Make It button. And I'm cutting my faux leather on a mat. And then we can see our 2 mats separated by material type. So I always like to go and mirror my images because the faux leather and the heat transfer vinyl will cut in reverse. If you're cutting the center, the Daisy center from permanent vinyl, then you don't need to mirror in this case. This is a circle, so it really doesn't matter. But if you were using a shape that had a left or right orientation, then you would want to not mirror for permanent vinyl, mirror for heat transfer vinyl. So I'll click back on the faux leather mat. I always like to cut that one first, and I'm just going to sort of drag my shapes around so that I can get the most cuts out of the smallest piece of material, and I cannot waste this really pretty polka dotted faux leather. So see how I'm kind of fitting the shapes together? And then this tells me that I need to cut a piece of faux leather that's about 7 inches wide and 6 inches tall. And then here we'll click on our heat transfer vinyl mat, and I just like to drag the shapes apart a little bit away from the side and away from each other. So my piece of heat transfer vinyl will be about 3 inches wide and almost 2 inches tall. So I'll click back here on my first mat and click continue. And the setting I like to use, no matter what Cricut machine I'm using, is this faux leather paper thin setting. If you don't have it set here as a favorite or a bookmark like I do, you can search for it by clicking Browse All Materials and look for it. If you're using an Explore Air 2, be sure to turn your dial to Custom before you browse and search for this material. If you don't turn your dial to Custom, it won't show up. So I'll go ahead and click on it. And then I always use more pressure. Again, any of the 5 current Cricut machines, this is the setting that I use because we're using that regular fine point blade that's already included. Then when it's time to cut this vinyl mat, you'll use the recommended cut settings from the manufacturer of your particular product. I'm using glitter vinyl, so I'm going to use the glitter vinyl setting with default pressure. And because this Caesar glitter is thick, I'm going to repeat the cut 1 time. So we're all set to cut our 2 mats. Let's hop back over to my overhead camera and get our mats cut out and put together our keychain. So I've already trimmed my faux leather down to size that I saw when I was looking at the mat preview screen in Design Space. It is really important that you trim your faux leather down to a size just slightly larger than the shapes that are going to cut. It's going to help you get a better cut, and with a detailed cut like all these little petals, these tiny tips and tricks are really important. I also have a video with all of my best tips and tricks for cutting faux leather, so I'll link to that for you so you can watch that as well. But one of the important tips is faux leather trim to size. It's going to go pretty side down on my purple strong grip mat. Kind of rub it all over with your hands. If you have a brayer, you can roll over it. And then now we want to go with our blue painter's tape and just tape all around on the sides. I use a lot of blue painter's tape, and when I'm done cutting, I just save the little pieces and reuse them. And you can do that several times with the the tape before it starts to lose its sticky. So I'm just reusing some tape. There we go. And the blue painter's tape around on all sides is another way we're going to get really nice cuts. So my Cricut is already set to cut using the faux leather paper thin setting with more pressure. So we'll just go ahead and load this into the machine and begin the cut. So the faux leather mat has cut one time, and this is another really important step if you're new to cutting faux leather. Before you unload the mat, you want to use your sharp weeding tool and just lift up the edges of your shapes here and see if they cut well. This looks like it did, but oftentimes with faux leather, you need to repeat the cut. And the way you do that is just by pressing the cut button again on the larger machines, again without unloading the mat. Or on the Joy, you'll press the rerun button on Design Space instead of the unload button. So this looks pretty good. I don't think I need to cut this again, but keep in mind, you may need to cut yours again, and you can repeat that process as many times as you need to. Just don't unload the mat. But this one looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead and unload the mat and remove the shapes. There we go. And then I need to cut out the heat transfer vinyl mat with the centers. So let me go back to Design Space. You won't be seeing this on the screen, but I'm just back in Design Space, clicking on the vinyl mat. I'm using the glitter vinyl setting with default pressure. And I'll put my vinyl shiny side down. Again, if you're using permanent vinyl, it's going to go right side up, but I'm using heat transfer vinyl. If your mat is not as sticky, you can use some of that blue painter's tape to sort of hold down the edges. And I think I will do that actually. So I did cut this vinyl mat twice. Again, your cut settings will depend on the material that you're using. And then I'll just weed out these little circles. And I've already set my Easy Press Mini. I've turned it on and it's warmed up at the low setting. There are two little circles. I'll just cut these apart. And then there's two steps to this keychain, and it's important that you do them in a certain order. So we've got our little shapes here. The first thing I'm going to do is heat press the centers onto the top flower shape. So let's take a step back a second. So this shape for the keychain is going to fold over, and this is glued. And then we're going to glue this on the top, and that's how, on both sides, and that's how the keychain is assembled. So what we want to do first is heat press the centers. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, line it up. Put my little Teflon cover sheet. You could use butcher paper or parchment paper. And I'm just going to press. I'm using it like an iron and moving it, but if you're using a regular easy press, you can just set it down. You don't need to move it. I'm going to do this for about 5 to 10 seconds. This is hot, so be careful. And then just carefully peel back that cover sheet. If when you're peeling, your vinyl peels up, just place the cover sheet right back down and press for another 4 or 5 seconds. That one looks good. Now we'll do this one. So we've got both of these set. Now the reason that I did this first with heat is once we've glued these two halves together, we don't want to apply heat to the glued keychain because the heat could make the glue inside the keychain, if it's not completely dry, it could make it bubble and add a lot of texture to our keychain, which we don't want. So it's important to do these two steps separately. So while these are here, the other thing I wanted to show you is when they heat up, they kind of lift a tiny bit. Can you see that? It's not perfectly flat anymore, which is one of the ways we're going to get some nice dimension with this little keychain. It's a little hard to see in the video, but the little petals sort of lift up, which is cute. I'm going to show you another trick to help us get that dimension with our gluing technique. So we've got our little keychain shape here. I've got my Fabri-Tac. Again, you can use any fabric glue you have and you like. And the first thing we're going to do is put our keyring on so we don't have to struggle with it after. So just kind of roll up these daisy petals like this. And the little key ring is already attached. We'll attach the tassel later. Then just sort of move the key ring out of the way. I'm going to use this fabric glue. And what I want to do is get glue on every petal. And I don't want to go to the edge because the glue that I am putting will sort of seep to the edges, which is what we want. If we do get a little seepage out the sides, that's okay. Let the glue dry and you can just pick it off. So you probably can't see, but I have glue on every petal, and I stopped putting glue right here. So see this little line? The glue is only down here. You don't want glue on this little bridge tab because that's where your key ring is. So we're gonna fold this over carefully. You only need glue on one side, and then just match up those little petals. So the edges of the keychain are white. If you wanted to, you could use, after this dries, you could use a color coordinated Sharpie and you could color the edges, but that's optional. I'm gonna set this over here, and you might think that we would now go and glue the top, but I don't wanna do that because I want this to be super flat, and how I'm gonna achieve the super flatness is by putting a heavy book on top of it. If I put these on now, then the whole thing would just be super flat, which I don't want. So I'm going to use my heavy book here. Just put that on top. The key ring is sticking out, and then this is going to sit here and dry. So once this dries, we'll come back. I'm going to let this dry for at least a couple hours, and then I'll come right back and we'll glue the top flower and we'll attach the tassel. Okay, so our keychain has had time to dry. Just going to take a look. It actually looks really good. Because I was careful to line up the little fronts and backs on the petals, I think it looks really nice. There's not a lot of overlap. And see how nice and almost seamless the edges are? That's because we press this flat under the book. It's really less about the glue that you use, because any good fabric glue will work, but it's more about pressing it under a book. So the next step is to add the top layer. And remember, I said we wanted to sort of keep the dimension in the keychain. At least that's how I like to do it. If you don't like how the top petals pop up off the back, then you could glue this again like we're going to do now, and then repeat pressing it under the book to make it really flat. But I kind of like the dimension. I think it's cute. And then we'll add the tassel. So again, I'm just using my Fabri-Tac, and let me show you where I'm going to glue. So this again is up to you. You could glue this. I'm going to glue the center as wide as I can, but you could glue each petal if you wanted to, again, to sort of press it down, but I want that dimension and that lift. So I'm just going to go in a big circle here. Doesn't have to be too much. I know that's hard to see, but it's glued just in the center. And then you want to place this down and stagger the petals. So the petals are not on top of each other, they're alternating. Let me see if you can see that. Yeah, you can see that. And see how that top lifts up? I think that's really cute. If you don't like that, you can glue it down. So I'm just going to sort of, one of the ways I'm going to keep this dimension is I'm only going to press and sort of press down with my hands where that glue is in the back. I don't want to press down the petals, but that's up to you. So let's just flip this over and we'll repeat with the back side. And now here you're going to want to match up the petals on the back layer with the petals on the front layer, so you don't see a lot of that backing. And I think that looks pretty good. Then if you want a little help getting this to the center to stay flat, when it's drying without flattening the petals, you can put something heavy that's round just kind of on the center there, and that'll help keep that center nice and solid and firmly glued. So I'll show you how to attach the tassel. I'll just show you on one of the one that's already dried, and this is really easy to do. I'm just using a 10mm jump ring and 2 pair of flat nose pliers, and I've already opened the jump ring. So I'm going to hold on to that with my pliers and hook it onto the key ring. Again, this is optional, and there's all kinds of really cute charms you could add if you didn't want a tassel. And then I just attach the tassel on, and then holding on with the pliers, I'm just going to close up the jump ring with the other pair of pliers. And that's it. Isn't that cute? I hope you enjoyed this project and you are going to make some faux leather daisy keychains yourself. If you like this project, I have so many more great faux leather keychain tutorials on my channel. I'll have a playlist for you, so just keep watching to get to the next one. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.